Imagine hiding a secret this big. What if everything you knew was about to change?
Every day, I watched my parents criticize me. They thought I was worthless, but they didn't know the real reason I was struggling. I could feel the weight of their disappointment on me, each harsh word like a blade slicing deeper into my soul. Every time I came home with a bad grade or didn't meet their expectations, I could see their eyes narrow in judgment. And yet, I knew deep down there was something they weren't seeing, something that I had been hiding from them for years. You know that feeling when you're just trying to survive? When everyone around you thinks you're lazy or unmotivated, but there's so much more going on under the surface and you can't explain it? That was my life. But no one knew, not even my parents. And when they found out, it would change everything. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me introduce myself. I'm Emma. I'm 16 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been the failure in my family. The one who couldn't keep up, who couldn't meet the high expectations set by my parents. My mom, Sarah, is a high achiever, the kind of person who never settles for anything less than perfection. And my dad, Tom, he's always been there, silently judging, always comparing me to others. They always told me I could do better. And trust me, I wanted to. I really wanted to. But there was something inside me that I couldn't control. Something that made everything harder than it seemed for other people. But I never told them the truth. Why? Because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. And what if they thought it was just another excuse? I wasn't just failing. I was fighting something no one could see. Every test, every assignment, I struggled. No matter how hard I worked, my grades never reflected the effort I put in. My mom would look at me, shake her head, and say, "Emma, you can do better than this. What's wrong with you?" And my dad, he'd just stay quiet, his disappointed silence hurting more than any words. But what they didn't understand was that it wasn't about trying harder or being lazy. I had something going on inside me that drained me, physically and emotionally. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was that I couldn't keep up. You ever feel like you're doing everything right, but it's still never enough? That's how it was for me. My parents just didn't get it. They thought I was unmotivated, that I was wasting my potential. But the truth? The truth was way harder to explain. I had a secret. And every day, I had to wear a mask, to smile and act like everything was fine, when inside, I was falling apart. But that was about to change. The truth would eventually come out, whether I was ready or not. But how did I keep up the lie for so long? How did I convince them I was fine when I was slowly losing control? Well, one day, it all came to a head. I thought I could hide it a little longer. I thought maybe things would get better. But the more I kept hiding, the more I realized there was no way I could keep this up forever. And then came the day when everything would fall apart.
Just a second. So Emma's been hiding something this whole time? Her parents thought she was lazy. But what if there is more to it? Why didn't she tell them earlier? What's really going on here?
It was another regular evening in our house, or at least that's what I tried to convince myself. My parents were sitting at the dinner table, silently pushing their food around, their eyes occasionally flicking to me with that disappointed look. My heart raced as I prepared for the conversation I knew was coming. "How's school going, Emma?" My mom's voice was calm, but the underlying tension was undeniable. I wanted to lie, to tell her everything was fine, to say I was working hard and doing my best. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't believe me. How could she? My mom, Sarah, had always been the type to push for perfection. She'd earned straight A's all through school and expected nothing less from me. My dad, Tom, wasn't as vocal about it, but his silence was worse. When he didn't speak, I could feel his disappointment weighing on me like a heavy cloud. I tried to explain to them countless times that I was doing everything I could, that I wasn't trying to fail. But they didn't understand. They never did. They thought I was lazy. They thought I was making excuses. And every time I brought home another below-average grade, the conversation would start again. The frustration, the disappointment in their eyes, the feeling that I was failing not just them, but myself, too. It was suffocating. "Emma, you know how important school is," my mom would say, her voice getting sharper every time. "Why can't you just apply yourself?" I wasn't lazy. I was applying myself. But they didn't understand that there was something else at play, something I couldn't explain. And yet, I smiled and nodded, pretending everything was fine, pretending to be the daughter they wanted. But inside, I was struggling more than ever. As time went on, I started to notice myself changing. I wasn't just exhausted from school. It felt like a weight was on my chest all the time, like I couldn't breathe properly. Even getting out of bed in the morning felt like an impossible task, but I kept pretending. Every morning, I would drag myself out of bed, put on my school clothes, and act like everything was normal. And when I came home, I'd face the same questions, the same disappointment. My parents didn't know I was avoiding social events because I couldn't keep up. They didn't know how I dreaded going to class, not because I didn't care, but because my body felt like it was betraying me. And then one day, I got a C on a history test. It wasn't the worst grade I'd ever gotten, but it was enough to set my mom off. She scowled as she looked at the paper, her frustration boiling over. "How could you let this happen, Emma?" she snapped. "You're smarter than this." My dad just stared at me, his silence louder than any words. I could feel his disappointment piercing through me, and I knew he thought the same thing my mom did. I was failing because I wasn't trying hard enough. The truth was, I was trying, but it wasn't enough. I knew the conversation was about to escalate. The familiar frustration in my mom's voice was growing, and I could feel my dad's judgment weighing heavily on me. But this time, something inside me snapped. What if they knew the truth? What if I told them everything? What would happen then? I wasn't ready to find out. Not yet. But soon, I would have no choice. And that's when it hit me. I could no longer keep pretending.
Hang on! Emma's been hiding this illness all along, and now her mom is starting to worry? Why didn't she speak up sooner? What's really going on here? Something isn't adding up.
The next morning, everything felt different. The air in the house was thicker, and even the simplest conversation felt like it could explode at any moment. I could still hear my mom's words echoing in my head. "You're smarter than this." The weight of her expectations was crushing me. But as I sat in class, the familiar tightness in my chest grew stronger. It wasn't just anxiety. It was something more. I tried to focus, tried to push through, but I felt like I was drowning in a sea of exhaustion. My hands were shaking, my vision blurry, and for the first time in weeks, I was scared. Scared that I wouldn't make it through the day. That afternoon, my mom called me into the living room after school. I could tell something was off just by the way she looked at me. Her eyes weren't filled with the usual disappointment. They were full of concern. "Emma, you haven't been yourself lately. What's going on?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. I could hear the underlying question. "Is there something wrong with you?" And in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep hiding it anymore. The exhaustion, the pain, the constant feeling of being on the edge, it was all too much. But I couldn't say the words. I couldn't admit that there was something really wrong with me. "I'm fine, Mom," I lied. "Just stressed, with school and everything." Her eyes narrowed, and I could tell she didn't buy it. But before she could press further, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my chest, a pain so intense I could barely breathe. I stumbled, clutching the armrest of the couch to steady myself. "Emma?" My mom's voice broke through my haze, panic seeping into her tone. "What's happening to you?" The pain passed, but it left me gasping for air. I didn't have an answer. I couldn't tell her the truth. I didn't even know what was happening to me. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal, and I needed help. The next day, I made an appointment with the doctor. I told my mom it was just for a routine checkup, but deep down, I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening to my body, but I knew something was seriously wrong. Sitting in the doctor's office, I felt like I was about to collapse. The doctor ran some tests and asked me about my symptoms: fatigue, pain, brain fog. It all came pouring out of me in a blur of frustration and fear. Finally, the doctor gave me the words I had been dreading. "You might be dealing with a chronic illness. This could explain the fatigue and lack of energy you're experiencing." She warned me to take it easy, to avoid stress, and to come back for more tests. But then came the hard part: telling my parents. How would they react? Would they believe me now? Or would they think I was just trying to get out of doing what they expected of me? I wasn't ready to face that fear. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they found out. I returned home that evening, my mind racing with questions. How do I even start this conversation? How do I explain to them that all this time they'd been wrong about me? And then it hit me. What if telling them made things worse? What if they didn't understand, or worse, thought I was lying to get attention? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, knowing that I was running out of time. The next morning, I would have to face them, and I couldn't hide anymore. But what would happen when I finally told them the truth?
Wait, so Ava finally told them, but they are shocked. After all this time, they never saw the signs. What's going to happen now? Will they finally believe it or make it worse?
The next morning, everything felt like it was leading to a breaking point. I had barely slept the night before, my mind racing with every possible outcome. The thought of confronting my parents filled me with dread. What if they didn't believe me? What if they thought I was making it up? But that morning, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. It was too much. I was exhausted, physically and mentally, and my body was giving out on me. That day, I woke up feeling like a shadow of myself. The pain in my chest was back, this time sharper, more persistent. I tried to ignore it. I tried to push through the day just like I always did, but with every step I took, it felt like my body was betraying me. By the time I got home from school, I could barely stand. The exhaustion was overwhelming, and I couldn't hide it any longer. My mom was in the kitchen when I walked in. I could tell by the look on her face that she knew something was wrong. "Emma, what's happening to you?" she asked, her voice shaky. I didn't know how to answer her. I had spent so much time trying to pretend everything was fine, but now, with the pain and the exhaustion almost unbearable, I had no choice but to tell her the truth. "Mom, I'm not okay," I whispered, my voice trembling. There's something wrong with me. I've been hiding it, but I can't do it anymore. For the first time in a long time, I saw my mom's face soften. She stepped toward me, her hand reaching out for mine, but I could feel the tension in the air. She was scared. "Emma, what do you mean?" she asked, her voice thick with concern. "I've been sick," I said, the words finally spilling out. "I have a chronic illness, and I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd understand. I didn't think you'd believe me." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything was silent. I could see the shock on my mom's face, and I could feel the weight of my dad's silence, even though he was in the next room. I could see that she didn't know what to say. My mom had always been the one to push me the hardest, to demand perfection. And now, here I was, telling her that I had been struggling in ways she couldn't have imagined. For a moment, it felt like everything was slipping away. "You're sick?" she whispered, as if trying to process what I had just told her. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I could hear the accusation in her voice, but I knew it wasn't anger. It was confusion, fear. She didn't know how to process it, and neither did I. My dad walked into the room then, his expression unreadable. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone serious. I looked at him, my throat tight, and said the words I never thought I'd say. "I've been hiding my illness from you. I've been too afraid to tell you because I thought you'd think I was making excuses. But I'm not. This is real." My dad's face went pale, and I could see the shock register in his eyes. He had always been the silent one, the one who expected the best without question. But now, he was faced with the reality that I wasn't just failing because I didn't care. I had been failing because I was fighting something beyond my control. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mom's face was a mixture of disbelief and guilt, and my dad's expression was unreadable. I couldn't tell if they were angry, confused, or just shocked. But I could see that they didn't know how to react. After a long pause, my dad finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell us, Emma?" The question hung in the air, heavy and full of so many unspoken words. And in that moment, I realized I had no idea what would happen next. Would they believe me? Or would this just be another thing that drove us further apart? What would they do now that they knew the truth?
Do you think they will ever fully understand? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
After the longest pause of my life, my dad finally spoke again.
Emma, why didn't you tell us?
The question had been hanging in the air for so long that when it was finally asked, it felt like a weight lifting off my chest. My answer came out in a rush, a mix of frustration and relief. I didn't think you'd understand. I thought you'd think I was lazy, that I was making excuses to avoid working hard. I didn't want to disappoint you. My mom's eyes filled with tears as she pulled me into a tight hug. Emma, we never knew. I thought you just didn't care. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked, and I could hear the regret in it. But what really hit me was the look on my dad's face. His usual stoic expression had cracked. He looked at me, then my mom, and then back at me, his eyes filled with guilt.
We didn't know, Emma, he said quietly. We thought you were just being lazy. We were wrong.
It was hard to hold back the tears. All this time, I'd been fighting something I couldn't control, and instead of understanding, they thought I was just giving up. But now that the truth was out, it felt like a door had been opened. They didn't just see me as the failure anymore. They saw me for who I really was. Someone struggling, not someone who just didn't try. I couldn't believe the words coming from my mom's mouth. I'm sorry, Emma. I never should have pushed you so hard without knowing the truth. I felt a surge of relief flood through me. All the years of pretending, all the lies, had led to this moment. I wasn't just an underachiever to them anymore. I was their daughter, struggling with something they had no idea about, and they were finally seeing it. I looked at them, tears brimming in my eyes. I just wanted to be normal. I didn't want you to think I was weak. My dad finally spoke up, his voice softer than it had ever been.
You're not weak. We were the ones who were wrong. We should have listened.
We'll make sure to help you from now on. I could see the genuine regret in their eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone, like I wasn't fighting this illness on my own. The days that followed were strange. My parents started making adjustments to our routine to accommodate my condition. They even reached out to doctors and specialists to make sure they understood what was happening to me. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. But the real consequences were in how it affected our relationship. My mom apologized over and over, but there was a part of me that still felt the weight of the years of misunderstanding. My dad, who had always been quiet, became more involved in making sure I had what I needed. It was clear he hadn't understood how serious things were. And me? I had to adjust, too. I had to learn to accept help, to admit when I wasn't feeling well. It was difficult, but over time, we learned to work together. I wasn't the failure anymore. I was just someone with a chronic illness who needed support. And for the first time, I felt like I was getting it. But even though things were better between us, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. It would take time for all of us to fully understand what this meant for my life and our family dynamic. There were still a lot of questions left unanswered, but at least we were starting to face them together. Looking back now, I can't believe how much I was willing to hide to avoid disappointing my parents. The shame I carried, the isolation, it all felt so heavy. But telling them the truth was the hardest and most important thing I've ever done. My parents and I may have lost some time, but we gained something more valuable: understanding. They realized they had been blind to what I was going through, and I realized that I didn't have to hide anymore. It wasn't an instant fix, but slowly We began to rebuild trust. I still deal with my illness every day, but now my parents are with me every step of the way. I'm not just Emma the failure anymore. I'm Emma, the girl who has a chronic illness but refuses to let it define her. And the best part? I'm finally free. Free to be me. And that's something I never thought I'd have.